Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for Christ's sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are back. We'll be here again in tomorrow as well as Monday and Tuesday. Got a lot of interesting guests coming your way. And by the way, if you have any suggestions, be sure to send them to us at contact@drdrew.com. We're trying to mix up the topics a little bit. And goodness, I'm watching you guys all on Restream here. I'm sort of just now jumped in. Hi, everybody. And there's a lot of your mom's house greetings there, which are sort of aloha. What's that, Susan?
Hello on Clubhouse.
Yeah, Clubhouse. We are watching them as well. We'll get calls from them after I let my guest go. Probably, I think it's probably going to be by the time he leaves, we'll bring calls in. Guest today is Arthur Aidala. He's a trial attorney with over 25 years of experience, a lot of high-profile cases, a lot of interesting cases. Roger Ailes, Anthony Weiner, Lawrence Taylor, just name just a few. And he has a new radio program called the Power Hour, AM 870. Caleb, help me with that. I can't. Is
AM 970.
And what town is that in? Is that New York?
New York.
New York. Okay. Watch that
on The Answer.
You can watch that in New York City. Let me bring Arthur in right now. Arthur Aidala, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. And I have to compliment your crew because the promo photo you used, I think I'm wearing the same suit. So the fact that you already knew what suit I was going to wear today, I mean, a lot of props go out to Mr. Nation.
Well, that's just a way of covering you're just covering for the fact that you've worn that suit too often. That's all. I get it. That's all right.
A blue pinstripe suit is kind of like a doctor having a stethoscope.
Right. That's right. And this nice looking suit, by the way. I wish I had something as nice. But be that as it may, tell us again about the radio show.
Well, I've been very fortunate. From a very young age as a lawyer, I got these cases that were in the media. The first case that I got as a criminal defense attorney was a gay man who killed his gay lover. And you would really appreciate this, Dr. Drew. I used for the first time in America battered woman syndrome for a man. I convinced the judge that battered woman syndrome is not a gender issue. It's really about control and domination. And it doesn't matter if it's two men or two women, et cetera, et cetera. It took a lot of convincing. I had to call 3 expert witnesses. But next thing I know, it wound up literally on the cover of the New York Times, the Daily News, the New York Post. Gay man can use battered woman's defense. And I got picked up through that by Court TV. And then I was fortunate enough, I had a 12-year run at the Fox News channel as their on-air legal analyst. And I got to cover some, the biggest cases when Michael Jackson was on trial and Casey Anthony and all the big ones. And I really enjoyed it. Not as much as being a lawyer. I definitely enjoy being a lawyer a lot. And the people, though, that I met with Fox were tremendous. In particular, Shepard Smith, who became a lifelong friend and is a lifelong friend. And I started doing some radio here in New York City, and there was an opening in December. I got a call from the general manager of a big New York City station. He said, listen, I'm going to have, evening drive time available, 1 hour, 6 to 7. Are you interested in coming on board? And it was a little nerve-wracking because, as you know, this is work. You know what you do, and you make it look easy. But I know you prepare for hours and you really focus on it. But we've been doing it for the first 2 months. And today I had two of the men who want to run for governor, who are running for governor, Andrew Giuliani and Rob Castorino on the show. I have all kinds of folks on the show, and I'm enjoying it. And it's a very similar skill set to when I start next week, a murder trial in Brooklyn, New York, speaking to jurors, speaking to people, the intimacy of radio, especially. And that's the same type of intimacy that you want to have when you're speaking to a juror. You want people to trust you. You want them to believe in you. You want to educate them, and simultaneously you want to entertain them. You don't want a juror falling asleep. The same way you don't want someone listening to your radio show falling asleep. So it's a little bit of an experiment right now, but we'll see what happens. I'm happy you brought it up because, it is a little exciting, but I'm always a lawyer first, Drew.
I get that, and that's always that is why you're on the radio, though, is that you have that worth as an attorney, as a professional that has an interesting set of expertise that you can bring to the radio. Radio is a funny discipline. Yeah, you're right. It's also storytelling, right? So it's education, storytelling. It's developing a rapport and intimacy. It's almost one-to-one. Somebody listening on their headphones or a speaker. And by the same token, though, radio is, people don't understand this about radio. Radio has a rhythm that you got to maintain a certain rhythm, and you're going out at certain times, and the call letters have to go every 2 minutes, and you have to reset who your guests are because people are tuning in and out of radio. Very different than this, which is just sort of more hanging out. This is a little bit different.
Right.
So, yeah.
And there's a difference between, like, when people are trying to explain to me, like, there's a difference between a podcast, which, again, you have the luxury of, you don't have hard breaks like I do on the radio, and you don't have to put the commercials in at exact times like I do. But the intimacy part, as a consumer of talk radio my whole life, it's like, you don't have a gathering and say, hey, let's sit around and listen to Rush Limbaugh. Hey, let's sit around and listen to the sports radio. It's usually when you're alone. You want companionship. And now with these smart speakers, Alexa, put on AM 970 The Answer. So I do enjoy it, and it's been fun. And we'll see what comes of it. But for right now, 2 months in the books, and I'm doing great.
Good for you. We'll get more into the legal in just a second, but you're making me think about radio. Radio is so funny. I've never really talked about this. You will hear from your program director if you are not every 3 minutes. It's AM 790 KBC, 1-800-222-5222 is our phone number. My co-host Leanne Tweed, my guest today, Arthur Aidala. Art, what's going on? It's like boom, 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 and then 3 minutes later you got to do that same thing again. So craziness. All right, enough radio stuff.
They've laid off me. It is a money business, right? It's all about the finances. So the truth is, because we've done so well with the sponsors and people paying the station to be on the show, they're not. I know exactly what you're talking about. They're not leaning on me as heavily. I think I have to do it once a quarter. I have to do the call letters.
Oh, that's not. Oh boy, they're giving you a break. That's good.
Yeah,
they were always on me like reset. Okay. Okay, so I want to talk. You said Giuliani's one of your guests, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the case that you're working on with him. But before we do, I want to talk about defense ethics generally. I think the average person is sort of confused about defense lawyering ethics, in the sense that everybody understands that, all right, everyone's entitled to a defense, but they don't really understand the ethical boundaries of that. I've noticed a lot of people will say things like, well, did you ask if he did it? And if he did it, can you still defend him? These sorts of questions are always on the tip of people's tongue when they're talking about what defense lawyers are doing. Help people understand what the principles are you're actually operating from.
Well, criminal defense attorneys and real estate lawyers and personal injury lawyers, we all have the same book of ethics. So we're all held to the same standards of what we can do and what we can't do. And I don't make that statement lightly. Like a real estate attorney who could be negotiating the price of the home, or whether the washing machine and dryer are included or they're not included, they are held to the same ethical standards as a criminal defense attorney is. People ask me all the time, oh, do you know the client did it or didn't? Drew, I will tell you, the vast majority of the time, it is very obvious whether they did it. So that's not usually a problem. Right. Thank God we live in a country where most people who get arrested have done something wrong. Thank God we live in a country where police are not arresting the wrong person. They're usually correct. Now, but then there's a variation of degree. Did they really do all the things that they're being charged with? But I will tell you, often I will probe as to whether someone did it or didn't. Did do this, what they're accused of, or did not. Because if I start digging too deeply, I could wind up getting them in more trouble. I could wind up unearthing more evidence and possibly having to bring that to the attention of a prosecutor. I will tell you what I cannot do. You can't have your client go on the stand and knowingly lie. So if your client says, yes, I stole the bubble gum out of the candy store, but I'm going to go on the stand in the middle of the trial and say, no, I wasn't there. I was at my Aunt Tilly's house in Miami. And I know that he's going to go up there and lie. I cannot do that. What I have to do, if he wants to testify and he wants to lie, the judge says, Mr. Aidala, do you have any witnesses? Yes, I'm going to call my client, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith takes the stand, and I say, Mr. Smith, is there something you would like to tell the jury? And then Mr. Smith gives his statement, and I say, is that the end of your statement to the jury? Yes. I say, thank you, no questions, and then he gets cross-examined. Now, I will tell you, the jury may not know what's going on, but the judge certainly will, and the prosecutor certainly will, to know that my client has lied and is up on the stand telling lies. That's never happened in my career. I seem to be pretty persuasive with a client to tell them, look, tell me the truth. Tell me what happened. And let's see if we can make, sometimes it's a horrible situation into a bad one, or a bad situation into a not the worst situation. It's a lot of mitigation what a criminal defense attorney does. Because as I said, most of the people who get arrested, Drew, are guilty. So now the prosecutor comes at you and he says, listen, your guy did it and I want to give him 10 years. And I say, okay, that's my starting point. Well, let's talk about the fact that, I'm making up hypotheticals, that his wife is dying of cancer and there's 3 kids. Let's talk about the fact that the wife who's dying for cancer needed certain medical treatment that they couldn't afford. And that's why he took the money out of his boss's checking account and forged his name and took the money. Let's talk about, that he coaches the kids' basketball team, that he's done X, Y, and Z. He's a Boy Scout, la, 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 la. And then you go in front of the judge and you lay that whole out and they say, they want 10 years and I want no years. And then the judge often, splits the difference or, hopefully leans a little bit more in my direction. But the ethics I rule my life by the ethics and the highest degree of ethics. And I make sure the client knows that, and the whole family of the client and the friends of the family know that, from jump. But really our job, Drew, is to make sure everyone's playing by the rules. To make sure the law enforcement officers didn't kick in someone's door without a warrant, to make sure the law enforcement officers didn't stick a gun in someone's mouth and says, if you don't sign this confession, your brains are going to be on the back of that wall, to make sure the prosecutors handle the evidence properly, make sure they turn it over properly, make sure they call the witnesses that they're allowed to call, and then to make sure that the judge only allows the jury to hear the evidence that the law says they're allowed to hear. And after that, it's really in the jury's hands.
And that's are you only doing trial, or are you also doing some of the deal making that goes on? Because I'm surprised. Mark Garagos is a friend of mine, and yeah, that's what he taught me, and I was surprised to hear that. You have
maybe more.
Yeah, and some of the time, it's funny. I've seen him comment on things that have a public sort of. End up in the news, and he's like, I don't understand why he didn't call an attorney and just make a deal right away. Because these things can go away very, very quickly, as opposed to being drawn out for God knows how long in trial.
Well, it also depends on people's personal situations. So I was representing a mother lately who's got 2 little kids, and her initial reaction was, get me a deal right away and let's get this behind me. And if I have to go to jail for a couple of years, then let's do it. And then things took place in her life, and she's flipped the script on me and said just the opposite. Let's drag this on as long as we can. Buy me as much time as I can, because X, Y, and Z things are changing in my life that could be advantageous to me or to my children. So every case is different. Every set of facts is different. And every judge is different. Every prosecutor is different. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's very little cookie cutter work. Even if the facts are the same, a guy selling drugs, someone who, steals money, someone who cheats in the stock market, even though the general part is the same, so many of the detail, almost all the details are somewhat different. And as a criminal defense attorney, you have to be kind of nimble and adjust to the facts that you have in front of you, and then figure out, how do I make the best out of this? And sometimes, Drew, you got to figure out how to make chicken salad out of chicken poop, which isn't always that easy to do.
Yeah. I get it. Now, another thing, I'm wondering if you do any sort of work with, since you do work with a lot of celebrities in high-profile situations, do you? I was talking to somebody today where somehow the topic of celebrities getting into trouble or dating and finger pointing goes on. I have a feeling maybe we're already in this world, but again, Mark mentioned this to me too. Garagos mentioned this to me also, that for a celebrity, even to have people in their house, he wants them to like sign an NDA. And if he's going to date somebody, there's got to be a liability waiver. And are we at that world now where people, if they're going to be, if they have a public profile, if they're going to be sharing their life at all with anybody, they have to have a contractual sort of a protection?
I do not envy people nowadays who have lost their anonymity. I mean, you're such a target. I mean, you are such a target. And some of the celebrities who I meet under positive circumstances, you could just see their guard is up. This afternoon, I took a picture with a very prestigious person in our community. And I tempered it with, listen, I'm not going to post this anywhere. And if anyone else is taking a picture of us taking a picture together and you Google me, there's nothing bad in my background. No one's going to say, oh, look who this person is in a picture with, Arthur Aidala, who is this unethical lawyer, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't exist. So, I mean, the governor of our state, and I think one of the big reasons why he had to resign, Governor Andrew Cuomo, he wanted kids like in college to like sign a waiver before they were going to go make out in the back of the movie theater, because we just really had a knee-jerk reaction to some degree to the real victims of the Me Too movement. What happened is that an order of protection is supposed to be a shield, but people started using it as a sword and just making up lies and making up, just fabricating tales. And then the police had these zero tolerance laws. So all a person had to do was call 911 and that an individual was arrested without hearing two sides of the story. So yes, we are living in a society where I tell everyone, you better be so careful. The one little benefit that they have, and it's a sad way to live, is we always have technology on us. So you always have a video camera. You always have an audio recorder in your pocket. And if you think things are going in the wrong direction, put that thing on and keep it somewhere. So if someone says, oh, yeah, he held me down and I was yelling and screaming, and you happen to have your phone and say, well, here was the whole hour we spent together and we were talking about my next movie and there was no yelling and screaming. The problem, Drew, is that if that exact scenario happened and someone made the complaint, and then that individual who they complain against has proof that that person's lying, you know what law enforcement, where they fall short? They won't arrest the person who just made the false arrest. I'm sorry, the false complaint. They won't say, hold on, you lied to us. You said he did X, Y, and Z, and we have proof that he didn't. You're under arrest. They don't.
Doesn't happen like that. I'm aware. And I know this isn't really your area, but slander, I feel like, and libel should be more frequently, people should be held accountable for these things more frequently, and they are not.
Well, I understand if you read my bio, it's not my area of expertise, but we are currently representing Alan Dershowitz, Professor Alan Dershowitz, in his slander libel case, so Miss Giuffre, who is the woman who just settled with Prince Andrew for millions of dollars, she made an accusation in some court papers, not court papers where they were suing Alan Dershowitz, but it was really a footnote where she said he was one of the people, Professor Dershowitz, that she was forced to have sex with by Jeffrey Epstein. Alan Dershowitz exploded. He said, that is an absolute lie. I never met this woman. And as she continued, she could have backed off. She continued to allege that this took place. And then he started calling her some not so nice names. And she sued him. She sued him for defamation. That case is pending in the federal court as we speak, because he said not nice things about her in defense of himself when she said not nice things about him. And, the area law is very interesting because he's the defendant. There's no issue that he said these things, right? They're written down. They're all over the place. So now what he has to do is prove that the sex that she says happened didn't happen. And then it shows he was actually telling the truth. It's very complicated. And it's in federal court, which is and in the Southern District of New York, which is really the most prestigious courtroom court, lower level court, stringent in the nation. And it's being tried by the former chief judge who's, she's an awesome judge, but, there's no fooling around in her courtroom. So, yeah, you got to watch what you say. You got to watch what you do. You got to watch. I will tell you, Alan wouldn't mind saying this. When these accusations first came out, he was so distraught. This was December of 2014, and then January, February 2015. And he was down in Florida where he lives. I got on a plane and I visited him. And, I'm coming from New York where it's 12 degrees. And now I go to Miami where it's 85 degrees. And I go, Alan, come on, let's take a walk on the beach. He would not even think of it. He goes, I'm not going to go near women in their bikinis. Not now. Not after I've been accused by this woman of, and it just changes your whole life. It changes the whole way you think, the way he's been ostracized in his community because of a footnote in a lawsuit against somebody else. So there before the grace of God goes almost any of us, because the power of the pen is more powerful than the sword.
Dr. Drew knows how that feels.
Oh,
that
yeah.
happened with a Wellbutrin case.
Oh, no. I've had so many different things. It's ridiculous. But the one that's closest to this is I was director of a chemical dependency unit in a psychiatric hospital, and I shared that responsibility with another physician. And he had a case in the facility, which was guy was really medically, he should not have been there, but they couldn't convince the family to transfer him out. They insisted that he go to our step down unit. I kept hearing people talk about this case, but I didn't know I didn't see the case. I didn't know anything about it, just hearing everyone's anxiety about this guy that was ill and they couldn't get him transferred out. Finally, they did get him transferred out, and I was talking to his doctor at the time. The nurse peeked her head in the drawer and said, Dr. Smith, the patient has been discharged. He said, excellent, finally, thank you. The nurse in the medical record writes down patient discharge, Dr. Smith and Dr. Pinsky aware, because I was sitting in the room when she made this announcement. So in a lawsuit, depositions, wasted time for months, and ridiculous, and eventually, dismissed. But that is I've been sued for delay in treatment, and somebody whose life I saved because I turned their case around within 10 minutes of arriving at their bedside. Delay in treatment, I get sued for. So just crazy shit.
Well,
If I'm going
to rag on my own profession.
Yes. Our son's a lawyer too, by the way. So we're not going to go too far with you.
Well, I will say this, because now I'll make it a little personal. The abuse of the system does not happen nearly as much in the criminal justice system as it does in the civil justice system. The criminal justice system, because people's lives are on the liberties on the line, there's a lot more checks and balances. And, if a prosecutor is going to bring a case, they have an ethical obligation to tell the judge, we believe we can prove these facts beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest standard in the land. In civil court, if they want to say Dr. Drew is bald because I'm pretty sure he's bald, where you're standing there with a head of hair, they can still file that complaint. You have to hire a lawyer. You have to defend the complaint. And again, there's very few ramifications for either the lawyer that files a shabby lawsuit or for the client who asks you to do so.
That's right. It's interesting when again, I was working in a psychiatric hospital for decades, and I saw the kinds of personality disorders shift across the 80s and 90s to a certain style. We call them cluster B personalities. And these are people with a lot of unregulated rage. They're often victims of horrible childhood stuff. And there was, I don't want to make people feel bad who have this particular diagnosis, but there are particular diagnoses within the cluster B spectrum that when they came in the hospital, I noted this in the 90s, minimum, every single one of them had 20 lawsuits under their belt, minimum. And I thought, something is going on here. Something really weird is happening. And I think the profession has sort of caught on to that a little bit. And so the attorneys aren't so apt to kind of frivolously go on with some of this nonsense and trying themselves to kind of bring it in.
The insurance companies have caught on as well. And they're like, no, there's a lot of lawyers, they bring these suits and they're like, I'll grab a quick $25,000. I keep $8,000. The client gets $16,000. And The insurance company's like, no. We'll give that $25,000 to our lawyers, and you fight the case.
That's interesting. That makes sense. So let's switch. I'm fascinated by the Alan Dershowitz case. I've talked to him before. Yeah, I've spoken to before, and he's just a fascinating guy to speak to. He's just such I think he's a treasure in terms of his intellect, and people get weird about his politics. They get weird about his politics on both sides, but that's what I love about people that are highly principled and highly, what shall I say? Not pragmatic. I guess principled is the word. The principles don't change, the thinking around the principles don't change, but the political winds change. And so people perceive him as though he's changed, when in fact the perspective on him has changed.
It's not just the perspective on him has changed. What Alan said, look, he got destroyed for going on the floor of Congress and defending the sitting president of the United States. Right. I will tell you, as a trial attorney, as a litigator that Alan is, there's nothing more prestigious, right, than representing the president of the United States, whomever that is.
That's right.
And people, it's Trump, it's Trump. And Alan said it, and I know he's genuine. I know he's sincere. He said if Hillary Clinton had won that election and they were going after her the same way for Benghazi or something else, or the emails, I'd be saying the same thing in the same way and the same location over and over again. And it wasn't about the individual. It was the principle. It was the principle of the constitutional
The principle. Yes, and the office. And I too, I spoke at the Trump White House. I also spoke at the Obama White House, but the Trump one gets taken issue with. I'd go right now and speak at the Biden one. I'm happy. I don't care who the president is. If there's a topic that I can help his organization, his administration make better judgments, I'm there. I'll get on a plane right now. But again, it's so strange how everything's been strange for the last few years. Let's be fair. There's so many things that are strange going on now that I couldn't even. I couldn't
You're
list them all.
You're supposed to fix that,
but
Dr. Drew. Isn't that what you do? Aren't you supposed to fix those strange?
Yes, it is, but the intensity and the hysteria, the histrionics, the hysteria, and the delusionality at sometimes around all this has gotten just wild. But I don't mean this when I say this, but in a weird way, Russia's done us a favor to focus us on something serious and makes everything else kind of
other than COVID
look a little different, right? Once you move away from that histrionic delusion. But anyway, let's talk about the oligarchs for a second. Let's talk about Ukrainians. You were working with Rudy Giuliani on a case where he had approached some oligarchs to help him out with the Hunter Biden computer. Is that correct?
Yeah, I got to tread lightly on this topic because it's a pending investigation. And there's no case right now. It's a pending investigation. What's in the public domain is that at 6:30 in the morning, the FBI came into Rudy's apartment and, took his, I used to know the whole count, like 2 laptops and 2 iPads and 2 cell phones, something along those lines. I was awoke and maybe it was 6:45 by the time he called me. It's kind of odd at 6:45 in the morning to get a call from Rudy Giuliani telling me, the FBI is here. And, what you have to understand, everyone knows Rudy, but when you're a lawyer, and especially when you do the type of work that I personally do, which is criminal defense work, he was forget about the mayor. He was the head of the Southern District of New York. He was the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He was the either second or highest ranked Attorney General of the United States of America. So to have the people who he worked side by side with coming in and saying, sir, we need to see your computer, we need to see your iPad. And he said they couldn't have been nicer, and they were total, absolute ladies and gentlemen with him. But they're going through that in the Southern District. And nothing has happened yet. So no one's gone into the grand jury that we know of, although that's a secret proceeding. But usually you get a little birdie telling you. And obviously, thank God for us, no charges have been filed. So the investigation is ongoing. I am cautiously optimistic that it is heading in the right direction. And the right direction is they've looked at everything. They've spoken to everyone. And again, I can't say this with any degree of certainty, except based on now, it'll be in November, 30 years of experience. I'm cautiously optimistic that at the end of the day, um, you may not hear anything. That's the biggest problem with some of these investigations. They don't give you, they only tell you when they charge you. They don't give you a letter that says you're all clear. I mean, it's happened a couple of times.
Right.
And in this particular case, I'm sure the lead counsel here, Mr. Costello, will insist upon that. But whether they give it or not, even though you insist, we don't know. But it doesn't appear that is heading in a bad direction for Mr. Giuliani. And I will tell you this, because he says it all the time. He knows, he's 100% certain that he did nothing wrong, that he didn't violate any laws, that he didn't. There's this Foreign Agent Registration Act document that they said he was supposed to fill out, but he said he was not. That's only when you're acting in a certain capacity. He was not acting in that capacity. So, I have my fingers crossed for Mr. Giuliani. I have my fingers crossed for Alan Dershowitz, because hopefully that case is heading in the right direction regarding Mr. Dershowitz. And I have my fingers crossed while we're on it for Harvey Weinstein, because 2 years ago, right now, I was trying that case. Actually, the verdict came in 2 years ago last week. But my law partner, Judge Barry Cammons, retired Judge Barry Cammons, argued the appeal on December the 15th. Of 2021, and we're awaiting decision. And people are like, "Oh, the jury already found him guilty." People should understand an appeal is rarely about the jury. An appeal is almost, not always, but often, more often than not, about the judge. It's about, did the judge give the defendant a fair trial? And the analogy I give is, if the Yankees lose a game to the Boston Red Sox, it's not about whether Derek Jeter got a hit or not. It's, did the umpire call the right people safe and the right people out? Did he call the right balls and the right strikes? And so that's what the appellate court looks like. So there's 5 women judges who are looking at, as we speak, basically, all of the trial judges' rulings, and to see, did he give Harvey Weinstein a fair trial? And all I can tell you, I don't know what's going on there, but during oral argument, the 3 of the 5 judges were pretty aggressive with the prosecutors about some of the judges' rulings. At an appeal, prosecutor is kind of the lawyer for the trial judge, because they got the conviction. They want the conviction to be upheld. So they're basically telling these 5 judges, no, the trial judge did do this right. No, the trial judge didn't make that. Trial judge did not make that mistake. So we're really waiting here at the firm any minute to see when that decision is. They don't tell you when the decision is coming out. It could be tomorrow or it could be a year from tomorrow. They are under no immediate time constraints. But, it's a interesting scenario, because for those of us who practice, the judge let in a lot of evidence against Harvey Weinstein that the vast majority of judges would not let in, like what happened in Bill Cosby's case. Bill Cosby, the first time they let one witness in and one corroborating witness in, it's called a Molyneux witness in, and he gets a hung jury. Then they retry it, and they allowed, 4 or 5 others in, and he gets convicted. In Harvey Weinstein's case, he's accused of sex acts on 2 people. They brought in 5 others. And I believe one of the appellate court judges said that. He's accused of 2. You had him in front of the jury defending himself against 7. You think that's fair? You think that's what the system is supposed to be doing? With that being said, Drew, I've seen judges be aggressive in one direction on the record, and then when they actually write their decision, they go in another direction. So we shall see.
Interesting. Yeah, I want to say about Giuliani and his representation of the Southern District. People forget he took down the mob, sort of inventing the notion of them being involved in the racketeering, right? I mean, he really was the lead counsel and the brains behind all that.
Yeah, they had this new law, the RICO Act, which was a
RICO law.
It was like a big net. And when you go fishing, and you used to go just with a hook, and then they discovered, well, if you just put a net in and you troll, you're going to catch a lot more. And that's what, without getting too deep into the weeds, what the RICO law was, and then they created a similar one for the state law. But yeah, I mean, he took a lot of people off the street. I will say a lot of those cases were ultimately reversed on appeal, but it kind of had the same effect as when he was the mayor. He just came in and said, we just got to clean this up. We're going to break some dishes along the way. We're going to break some plates. But at the long run, the people are going to be safer, and then we'll deal with the ramifications of having broken some plates later on.
And by the same token, when it comes to, again, Alan Dershowitz and I forget who else we mentioned, that is sort of waiting on the
Harvey. We spoke about Mr.
investigation. The investigation is what I was thinking about. But in any event, these investigations, if I were them, I would still be nervous because I think of it the way I think of malpractice. You know, when a malpractice case, you can go through any medical record and you can find something. You can find something that just isn't right. And I feel like, you know, you can do that with anybody. In these criminal cases, I feel like I said, what happened to Martha Stewart seemed like kind of that to me. I remember I had dinner with her before that all went down, and she was telling me, she's like, I'm so excited because I'm creating these stock options for my employees. They've been so great, and I wanted to give this to them. I don't really care if I get it, but this is really something I can do for them. And I don't think she was being insincere. And then she gets taken down for having done that, for creating the stock option plan. I mean, there was some other
Well, what she really got taken down
uncovered.
for was she didn't really get taken down for the stock option. She got taken down, and because I use this case as an example all the time. When I say all the time with my clients, she got taken down with when she went in and interviewed with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Right.
She lied about
Right.
some little piece about getting a phone call on the plane.
Right.
And she said it didn't happen,
Yes.
and it did happen. And so she had no issues with the actual stock option piece that she was doing. She went to jail for lying to the FBI. Typically, you don't go to jail for as long as Martha Stewart went to jail for telling a little fib like that. I just handled a case like that recently where I was able to get the guy cleared of everything. But when we were speaking with the prosecutor, he gave him some misinformation. No, I never did go to China. I mean, that's such a stupid thing to lie about. Of course, the feds know if you went to China or not. It's such an easy thing.
Yeah.
But he had to plead guilty to that. He had to give up his job and everything for telling the lie. So, but I agree with you.
That's the point. They find something. They'll find something.
Correct.
They'll find something. Or trip you up or something. You know.
You're correct. I'm hopeful that even though Rudy Giuliani's reputation has changed significantly since the 2020 election and him going out on the stump for President Trump after he lost, I would like to think that he still gets the benefit of the doubt in the Southern District of New York, where, as you said, he did so much good, and in the Department of Justice under Ronald Reagan, where he did so much good, where if it's a really close call, he deserves the benefit of the doubt. Because he was the mayor, he didn't commit any problems. He was the U.S. attorney, he didn't commit any problems, and he's been a civilian for all of these years, and he hasn't had any problems. So we shall see. The jury's out, as they say.
And indeed, and then so I don't know what you can talk about with Giuliani's situation, but I'm sort of curious because everyone's thinking about Russia and the Ukraine, obviously, right now. But it was Ukrainian oligarchs, if I read correctly, that he had approached, and I didn't know there was such a thing. Are those sort of leftover Russian oligarchs who lived in the Ukraine, or what does that mean? Am I right? Ukrainian oligarch?
I believe that is the case. But Drew, this is kind of like a third rail kind of thing, as you know.
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend like I'm the government. We cannot comment on pending matters.
Well, let me put it this way: the fact that there are such a thing as Ukrainian oligarchs caught my attention, and my question would be: are they also under the same scrutiny as the Russian oligarchs right now? Are they also having their assets tied up and things? Do you know that? I mean, it's not unrelated to Rudy Giuliani.
I don't believe so. I've been obviously following this very carefully, not only for my own curiosity, not only because I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I have many friends who have attachment to Ukraine. One of my office mates is from Ukraine. His wife is there as we speak. So
oh my God.
Following, and she can't get out. But I haven't heard anything about that. I will tell you from people who are in Ukraine, and again, I'm getting a little bit of live information from them. Their whole thing about us and the whole world with the sanctions, they're like, Putin doesn't care about sanctions. He doesn't care if we suffer. He's probably the richest man in the world with all of his hidden assets.
No, I know.
He doesn't care. The prices are going up, the ruble's going down. That doesn't mean anything to him. He doesn't have that empathy and that compassion for the people who he leads. So they don't really see these sanctions as something that's really going to, slow the surge and the explosions. I mean, today's videos were just it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's terrible.
He doesn't care about his people either.
Well, but I wonder, two things. A, can you give us an update on what's going on with your colleague's wife? Is everything okay? Does she have any reports from inside?
Just that she's not in one of the main areas that's getting, bombarded. So, he explained it to me like, imagine if, I don't know how much of your viewing audience knows the geography of New York, but like instead of being in one of the 5 boroughs, you're like right outside in Westchester or you're right outside in Nassau. You're still, only maybe 10, 20 miles away, but that's not exactly an area that makes any sense for them to bomb unless they just want to start wiping out civilians and they start targeting, purely civilian areas. No, it's terrifying.
I'm not sure
still, period, amen. It's terrifying.
If the boroughs are being attacked,
I know, it's terrifying. A friend of mine, their son, I think he's 25 years old, right as it was going to happen. You know what's interesting? Because I saw an article, I think it was in the Times yesterday. My office mate here, he said to me, nothing will happen while the Olympics are going on. So he stayed there until the Olympics, right before they ended. Or maybe he stayed there right until they ended. And then he came back. And sure enough, it's in the newspaper saying that China asked, I don't know how accurate it is, but it is in the paper that's got all the news that's fit to print, that, China said to Russia, please don't do anything during the Olympics.
Crazy.
We only could pray. But my friend's son, he left during the Olympics, and first he went to Turkey, and then he went to Greece. But think about it. If you're living there, you have an apartment, you're all set up, right? Your family pictures are there and your favorite mug and your sheets and you got to leave with a backpack and a suitcase forever. That's horrible. I mean, it's just horrible.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And I got to say, like I was saying, is that if the 5 boroughs were attacked, I'm not sure I'd want to be in Ossining. I'm just saying. but how
about Ohio?
Up the river would be enough. Ohio will be okay. That I could take.
Okay.
But I wonder, do you think, and I'm asking your opinion just unfairly, but I'll ask it, that the Russian people, this is not a popular war with the Russian people. The sanctions are going to feel the sanctions. Is there a world where his inner world, the leaders around Putin become pressured by the populace to do something, and some sort of Valkyries type operation develops against Putin?
Well, to your point, today in my research, I saw that, again, I don't know about the accuracy. I can't vouch for the accuracy, but an oligarch put a bounty on Putin's head. He says, you take him out,
so
and I don't know what he'll give him $10 million, $20
right?
million. I forget how much it was. I mean, for these guys, $1 million is like, the dollar for me.
Nothing.
But I could see something like that happening. But look, here's what I've been saying, Drew. If I am the president of Ukraine and I'm watching what's happening and I see the troops coming in and I have the personal capital of the whole European Union and the United States of America and Australia and New Zealand, I have to cut some sort of a deal before my people get killed. Like, what good is it going down as a hero, going down as a martyr? Okay, good. They offered him out. They offered him a way out. He said, I don't need a way out. I'm staying here to fight. Okay, that's great. But you gotta, the ship is sinking. Telling the people to stay on the ship is not the way to go.
Yeah.
I
get it. I get it.
I kind of called that at the beginning.
Yeah, but I think there's sort of a weird, naive notion about how brutal the Russian army is willing to be. I think it's naive to think that they won't be as brutal as they need to be, whatever that is. Yeah, whatever it is, they'll just keep escalating.
After day 5, I guess, a couple of days ago, and everyone's all rah, and the Ukrainians are holding up. I say, guys, folks, this is like a high school baseball team playing the New York Yankees. Yeah. And like they got through the second inning. They got through the second inning and they're only losing 1-0. Jeter hasn't been up. A-Rod hasn't been up. Mariano Rivera's not warming up in the bullpen. Like, are you kidding me? They have 40 miles of people.
Yeah.
And then the big headline that popped on my thing, the caravan is stalled because they don't have gas. Russia's got more gas than anybody on the planet right now. You don't think they're going to get gas to move it to Ukraine? So a deal has to be cut. I don't know if a third party has to come in, but enough with the killing, enough with you ruining this beautiful country, just turning on the TV and watching beautiful buildings, just boom, goodbye, destroyed. Besides the obvious loss of human life, if he succeeds, Putin's going to get another piece of his country that's going to be decimated. That doesn't even, doesn't even provide any value.
Well, that's what I'm curious about the mind of a leader like this. Like, how do we just prove that he's batshit crazy and he needs to be stopped? Like, he's not going to stop at the Ukraine. He's going to keep going.
That's a different story.
It's a different matter. And I was watching a documentary last night on Kaiser Wilhelm. And it really reminded me of Putin quite a bit. It's very interesting.
Well, here's what I've heard
can affect world history.
Right, but what I've heard from military experts is that Putin does not have the hardware to really do anything like what happened in the 30s and the 1930s and the 1940s in that part of the world. He just doesn't have. They just don't have the not only the manpower. They may have the manpower. They don't have the tanks, the planes, and where the sanctions may work is they are cutting off some of the software and those chips and the microchips that a lot of these now new advanced weapons need. So again, I've listened to 2 or 3 generals and colonels, all retired. But they were trying to allay the fears of the listeners, saying he can't go that far. He's not that crazy. Now, he's always got that crazy nuclear button. And don't forget, right before he went in, he showed that he's got nuclear power from the land, from the sea, and from the air. He launched 3 missiles, obviously with no warheads on them. So he's flexing his muscles in that regard. And another dear friend of mine, his brother is a full bird colonel. He stayed in the Army. West Point graduate. He's stationed in Germany, and they are on the move. I mean, NATO and American troops, they're not just sitting back watching television to see what happens. They are on the move. They're fortifying areas around Latvia, around Poland. If he thinks about doing anything crazy, I don't think we're going to be asleep at the switch from the information that I'm getting.
That's good. I also saw some generals talking about, the Ukrainian defense, that they were sort of fascinated, particularly that they could hold as long as this week. They kept saying that he'd hold through this week. It'd be extraordinary, be like so like an amazing event that this,
because I think they thought, Drew, I think they thought it was going to be more like the Taliban and the Afghan army, that it was going to fall in a day, like boom, 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 and or even. Back in the day when we went into Kuwait, it was, Norman, come on, help me with his name.
Schwarzkopf.
He went in, bang, 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 and it was over. And I think many people, including the Russians, thought that was going to be the case. And when it wasn't the case, everyone was like, oh, yeah, we won. It's like, they didn't win. Russia's going to bring in more people and more troops and more air power. So it just has to end.
Just awful.
It has to end.
Ugh, it just has me upset all the time. I don't know what to do about this. My fear is also he'll move some submarines to the coast. That's my next fear.
Yeah. I mean, if he's got a bounty on his head, why does he give a shit if he pushes the button or not?
Well, I'll let you answer that.
Well, I don't think he thinks he's gonna get killed. It's funny because I said to someone, actually, I had dinner last night with Geraldo Rivera, who I love, like an uncle. My son calls him Uncle Geraldo, and we were just the two of us, and we're just chit chatting. And I said, I said incorrectly when I was talking about he doesn't care about his people suffering because of the sanctions. I said he doesn't care about his legacy. And then Geraldo goes, or does he only care about his legacy, not the one about taking care of his constituents? but about the one saying, I'm recreating the Soviet Union. I got Crimea back.
Right.
Now I'm getting Ukraine,
That's right.
etc. And yesterday was Mikhail Gorbachev's 91st birthday. And I could only wonder what he was thinking watching all of this. Hopefully he's in a good mental state that he can understand what's going on at 91. And saying, what happened? I created all of this peace. We've had world peace for so long, and this guy's blowing it all up.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get his. I'd love to get that opinion. Well, listen,
Drew,
I said it was
real quick though. As a criminal defense attorney, right? And I was a prosecutor, so I always look at both sides of the angle of the argument.
Yeah.
And what I said to someone was, if all of a sudden Russia came into Canada and they were going to have the ability of putting troops and putting the army, like the equivalent of Ukraine becoming part of NATO, what would America's reaction be? And then you can just go back to the 60s to the Cuban Missile Crisis. And, how did we react there? So nobody knows what Putin's really thinking. It would be unbelievably easy and spectacular if he just said, look, I want representations from the United States of America and from everyone in NATO that Ukraine will never be part of NATO. If you sign on this thing right now that they'll never be part of NATO, you'll never put military bases there, there'll never be military forces there, I'll leave it alone. I mean, that's a very simplistic answer, but it would be nice if it was that simple.
I get it.
They could do what Finland, Malta, they can be part of the European Union. But no, Ireland, Finland, Malta, they're part of the EU, but they're not part of NATO.
Yeah. No, I get it. I try to look at both sides of the table too. But unfortunately, it's hard to speak publicly about the Russian, or at least the Russian Putin point of view with what he's doing, right? What he's doing is inexcusable. There's nothing okay about it,
and when you see
it on the, but I do understand. Yeah, but here are things that we have to kind of at least think about, is that the origin of Russian culture was Kiev. That's where Russian culture came from. And it's Peter the Great that moved it north and east. And, so there's a deep connection. And when I was reared as a Ukrainian immigrant myself, I was always told I was Russian. I was Russian. I didn't learn I was Ukrainian until I was 50. And so there's this crazy connection that's hard for us to understand. Now, I also am deeply connected to the Ukrainian sense of autonomy and nationalism. I think that's inspiring and it's incredible. So I'm not taking an opinion on either side. I feel helpless over all of it, but it is interesting to kind of think it through. This moment has a history attached to it. Let's put it that way, at least.
It absolutely will. And also because, thank God, we haven't seen, you can't minimize, we live in such a visual world. We haven't seen war with these types of crystal clear photos and devastation where it's in your hand, right? It's on your phone.
Yep.
So you're like looking at death happen on your phone. So yes, it is a moment in history.
Right.
And I'm sorry you learned just last year that you're Ukrainian. But it's
well, actually, he's Belarusian.
Just last year, a few minutes ago, in fact.
He is.
No, he's giving me a compliment. So
I know. He's actually Belarusian, so you were more Russian than Ukrainian, right?
Grandfather was Ukraine, grandmother was Belarus, and but both were we were raised with the idea they were both Russian. Yeah, to the point, I saw, what's the general's name that got in trouble because he was having an affair or something?
Petraeus.
Petraeus. I saw Petraeus on TV. Yeah, saw Petraeus on TV, I think last night, saying, we've never before had such a ringside seat to war, and it's going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. And I completely agree with you when you say that. Well, listen, I told you I was going to go on 45 minutes. I have kept you beyond, but go ahead, finish your thought.
No, I was going to say, where I live in Brooklyn, New York, I mean, there is a huge, huge population from that part of the world. Huge. Yeah. I mean, Brighton Beach, Coney Island, and, they don't have borders as far as I know. Oh, you're Ukrainian and you're from Belarus and you're from Moscow. They all live together.
That's right.
And I could only imagine
that's right.
the somewhat of the tension on the boardwalk of Coney Island and Brighton Beach, as this is all taking place. And I just hope no jerk does anything stupid here in the city and attacks someone of Russian descent or something like that. Their way of saying, this is justice for what's going on in Ukraine.
Yeah. Oh my God, I would hate to see that. And then you've got the Polish folks over at Greenpoint, and they're nervous and taking all the immigrants in, and they're upset about that. But thankfully doing it. Well, listen, as I said, I've overstayed my welcome with you. You've been very generous with your time.
Look at that!
And now the cops are coming for you right now. This is a very
air raid. There's an air raid.
It's been an honor and a pleasure.
That was downtown Brooklyn cops. So give people again
our favorite cops
where you would like people to go for the radio and for anything more. Arthur Aidala.
It's AM 970. The Answer is the radio station, and if you just Google my name, Arthur Aidala, you'll get a couple of kicks out of what's there. I do the polar bear plunge in Coney Island on January the 1st, which some years is easier. Yeah, there's a lot of us down there. Although I will tell you, when they canceled it in 2020 going into 2021, we still went. The worst was going from 2018 into 2019. It was 12 degrees when we got to the beach. But we try to, the law, as what you do, Drew, the law and taking care of people and having people's lives in your hands and taking it as seriously. And have the audacity to put myself in your category, taking it as seriously as we do. It does get stressful sometimes. So there are ways to blow off steam. I'm actually the president of the Friars Club, where we get to go in and have some laughs and have some entertainment. And we're honoring Tracy Morgan because in May, because we wanted a comeback story. And as people may know, Tracy Morgan was in a horrible car accident, debilitating car accident, but he came back. New York's coming back. The Friars Club's coming back. The courthouses are coming back. So, if you put my name into a computer, you probably get a couple of chuckles, as well as saying, how can he represent all these nasty people? But I try not to be too nasty myself.
Well, and I'm in the city a lot, so I'm going to come seek you out and hopefully shake your hand in person.
We will have a good time, my friend. I may drag you to Brooklyn.
So great to meet you.
I know Brooklyn well. I'll be over.
We were in a gunfight at.
We were in a gun battle at Peter Luger's. Did you hear about that gun battle of 6 months ago? Yeah. They had a shooting, and we were in the restaurant. We were at Peter Luger's, all on the floor crawling around.
No.
Oh yeah,
we're
good
gonna
time.
go.
We love
Susan,
Brooklyn.
Look this up. We're going to go to L&B Spumoni Gardens. It's almost 100 years old. Right. It's an old school Italian place where the red sauce is flying all over the place. L&B Spumoni Gardens. You will eat. I took Justice Alito there, Justice Scalia there. You'll have a night you will not forget.
Fantastic. And we will. I'm holding you to that. We'll see you
wait.
There. All right. Thanks so much.
All right. Be well. Thank you.
You too. Arthur Aidala, everybody.
I just want to make a comment about some of the comments on Restream.
Yes.
Somebody said, "Oh, he only represents the pervs," and I'm like, somebody's got to do it. It's like Mark Garagos is a friend of ours. Like we never really approved of the people that he represented, but still, it's like we're not trying to say, "Oh, we think he's right or wrong," but somebody's got to do this job. Well, it takes a very special person to take these kind of jobs.
You only hear about. Do you think those are the only 5 cases he represents, or the ones you read about in the news?
Right.
No, they have hundreds and hundreds of other people they help. And you could be one of those people who gets accused of something or who knows what. And so, it's easy to sit in disdain of defense. Yeah, Lincoln, Scott Cruz says Lincoln was a defense lawyer. He was. And he developed some very famous defenses. And, it's the proper functioning of our legal system.
It's a job. He works.
Well, you want the system to work well, yes, and again, you don't want a guilty person going away. That's the most serious thing that could happen in the system.
Right. We don't need to just use a guillotine and get it over with, but they got to fight it out.
So, did that satisfy your need to talk about Ukraine and Russia enough?
No, yes, but I just want to know, how we let Putin get this crazy.
Well,
this
part of the way we did
crazy.
is with oil. I see that as clear as day. That by making us
even if he gets
oil,
Ukraine, the Ukrainians aren't going to be helpful.
By giving him a pipeline that gives him $1 billion a day,
right,
and letting that run for a year. Well, guess what? Now we got.
Yeah, but he could have just given them their land and then negotiated that with them.
Okay. Here's some.
My thoughts.
Here's a super chat has a question on Restream. Hi, mommy's wife tested positive today. Symptoms started Monday. 35-year-old healthy, little lung congestion, sinus pain, monoclonal antibodies, oral pill, waited out. I'm negative. Brady, you might take something called molnupiravir, which is good for people that have been exposed. For her, that's a hard call. It's probably Omicron, and so very few of the monoclonal antibodies are going to work. If she has a lot of congestion, I would definitely use corticosteroids. She might benefit from fluvoxamine early. Whether she should be on Paxlovid, which thank God the President of the United States mentioned on his State of the Union the other night, which I was overwhelmingly overjoyed to see that he's willing to distribute that finally. That is something your doctor has to consider, Brady, based on what he or she sees when they examine your wife or talk to her directly. I'm a big fan of Paxlovid. I think we should be using it early and liberally. Now, it's a new medicine. We don't know all the side effects yet. There may be stuff that we learn later, but at this point, it looks very safe. Molnupiravir is a similar medicine. It's even more safe, and that would be for you to reduce your risk, unless you're triple vaccinated or previous COVID with vaccine, in which case, even if you get Omicron, it's a nothing, and probably will give you, this is going to be a controversial statement, better, broader immunity than if you were to get boosted again. So there's that. That makes sense, Susan, what I said? Or you weren't listening?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you have fun in...
so we were just in, speaking of COVID.
New Orleans, yeah.
Yeah, we were just in New Orleans with no masks and huge crowds of people and having a great time. And I have like a little cough today, and I've been taking COVID tests every day like I give a shit. But just in case, I don't know, maybe I got it again.
Let's take a little break.
But we had a great time. It would be worth
I'll bring it back. We'll talk about Susan's time in New Orleans at Mardi Gras after this. Since the beginning of the pandemic, nearly 1 in 5 Americans has reported consuming an unhealthy amount of alcohol. Could be you, but only 10% of them are actually getting the help they need. Reframe is a neuroscience-based smartphone app that helps users cut back or quit drinking alcohol altogether. Using evidence-based tools, techniques, and content, Reframe guides users through a personalized program to help them reach their goals. Comprised of daily tasks, a comprehensive toolkit, a community forum, and accountability guides, Reframe is a modern, accessible, and affordable resource that can help anyone looking to reevaluate their relationship with alcohol. Reframe is backed by Harvard University and Emory University Schools of Medicine, and it is ranked the #1 alcohol reduction smartphone app worldwide with over 350,000 downloads. With Reframe, there's no stigma, just science, no labels, just support. To learn more, go to joinreframeapp.com/Dr. Drew. Use the code Dr. Drew for 25% off your first month or your annual subscription. That's at joinreframeapp.com/Dr. Drew. Let's talk about our friends at Hydralyte. I can't say enough about Hydralyte. You hear me talk about them all the time. It gets me through workouts and medical procedures and colonoscopies and COVID. It absolutely contributed to my recovery from COVID. Hydration is key to feeling healthy, and there's never been a time when that could be more important. We're in the height of cold, flu season. Every headache has got you testing for COVID. Staying hydrated can keep the questionable symptoms at bay, and there's nothing better than Hydralyte to get it done. Taking their hydration formula one step further, now there is Hydralyte Plus Immunity. It starts with their fast-absorbing electrolytes and adds a host of great ingredients. Plus, each single-serve, easy-pour drink mix contains 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C and 300 milligrams of elderberry extract. Hydralyte Plus Immunity comes in convenient, easy-pour powder sticks that rapidly dissolve in water to make a great-tasting drink that has a 75% less sugar than your typical sports drink. It uses all-natural flavors. It's gluten-free, dairy-free, caffeine-free, non-GMO, and even vegan. Hydrolyte Plus Immunity is also now available in ready-to-drink bottles at the Walmart next to the pharmacy, or as always, you can find it by visiting hydrolyte.com/Dr. Drew. That is HYDRALYTE.com/Dr. Drew. And be sure to use that code Dr. Drew 25 at checkout for a special discount. And welcome back. Tomorrow we are going to have a physician. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, okay. We can hear you.
We have a physician here who is also an epidemiologist. She's been doing research on pediatric vaccination for COVID. We're going to talk a little bit of vaccine in children. We're going to talk a little masking. And it'll be a very interesting conversation.
So
we're back to COVID tomorrow.
I want to give a little shout out to our sponsors, Reframe and Hydrolyte. Very good for post-week in Mardi Gras. Both. Log on to that Reframe and
is that what you're doing?
Start managing the drinking today.
Yeah. All right. Is it working?
Figure out my relationship with alcohol, and then also Hydrolyte. Definitely good to have when you're in New Orleans during Mardi Gras.
Yes, I've been feeling weirdly dehydrated all day.
Yeah,
all right,
I'm drinking
let's get
it right
to the phones.
now.
We are out on Clubhouse. If
and
you,
a lot of coffee.
If you want to ask a question on Clubhouse, raise your hand and I will come to you. And by raising your hand, you are agreeing to be streamed out on multiple platforms, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. And Josh, what's going on?
Hey, Dr. Drew. I'm upset with the Ukraine situation because I feel like the whole world is so tightly connected, probably because of COVID, just for the last 2 years of being in pandemic. And this is not an insignificant move on Russia's part. And I know you said you didn't really have anything to do with it, but I feel like the onus is on Russia here for being the aggressor. That's typically how we look at things, right? I mean,
no. I said there's nothing okay about what they've done. Don't get me wrong. Nothing okay about it. But I'm trying to understand, the history and the points of view and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So for me, it's sort of like, I feel like we all have aggression. I feel like everyone has a little bit of Putin in them, if you will.
It's funny.
And I feel like, it's sort of like, what can we do to kind of keep ourselves, because everyone's coming back, everyone's demasking, we're all in our faces now like we've never been before. How can we sort of keep ourselves in check, not to upset our neighbor, not to upset, because we're all coming back, and I feel like we do have Putin in us, and how can we sort of not, go over and hit Ukraine, so to speak? And I know you're sort of a psychologist in that way, and I wanted to ask you.
I'm not quite sure what to make of that. I love your saying that, there's a little Putin. I mean, Putin is a human being.
A little Putin in all of us.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting way of framing it.
That should be a T-shirt.
And I have had, I hope, I've had some crazy feelings. Like if I were younger, I'd go over there, or if I had a terminal illness, I would spend my last days helping these people. I don't know. I'm hoping that it refocuses us. I said something very provocative, and I didn't really mean it about 15 minutes ago. I said Russia did us a favor, and I don't mean that literally. I mean that the fact that they behaved the way they did, or Putin behaved the way he did, got people kind of focused on real, serious
nationalism
stuff,
fighting and coming together as a country. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, not only that,
unlike us,
having a common enemy, of course, always sort of pulls everyone together. But I hope it helps put things in perspective, right? There's been a lack of perspective taking. That's one thing about hysteria, is that it gives no perspective. You're in a hysterical state, and it's all out of control and overwhelming. And now it's like, oh, this is something very serious that should get my attention. Oh, this other thing that I was freaking out about is not freaking me out the same way anymore. I wonder if I could have a different perspective on that. And that's what I'm hoping. And
then we're all agreeing that it's not good what he's doing to the Ukraine. Like, people, you don't see people, it isn't a 50-50 down the middle, like, oh, it's okay, he should be raiding the Ukraine.
Right. There are people saying
we're more 100% against it.
There are people saying we created this through some, sort of not paying attention.
He's been horrible to his people for the last 10 years. Remember when we went to Russia, and we were talking to certain people, and they were saying how unhappy they were with Putin, and when we were on the tours and everything.
Some weren't. Some
way
were
back
happy.
then. Yeah, I mean,
they were unhappy
it's been
with
growing.
He took care of some of the oligarch excesses, which was what was making people unhappy. It was the sort of
they still had, you could just tell there was still poverty, and it hadn't come anywhere since the fall of the wall. But I felt really bad for them then, and it couldn't have gotten. It probably just got worse as time went on.
And so
he's not a great guy.
And so that was, how many years ago? We were there 10 years ago, 12 years ago?
Yeah, it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah. So, it's awful. And I feel, we talked to Julia Tublinka, was that her last name? From 90 Day Fiancé, and she could not have been more delightful. That's a Russian person.
Yeah, she said the Russians don't like it. And I found a video about how the Russian soldiers who were captured they would get to leave if their moms came and picked them up.
Right.
And it's like, because these are kids, they didn't even know they were going to war.
One of the awful things about this war, I would say, is that you don't know what to believe. And so maybe that was apocryphal what you saw. I saw the same stories. I don't know what's.
Or they said, "Oh, when you get captured, just say that you didn't know you were going here."
They've so undermined their what is the word I'm looking for? Their veracity, that I don't know what to believe anymore. So I don't believe anything. I just look at it with all skepticism. But who knows? Which is a really sad state of affairs. I like hearing from the Ukrainians on the street. You get a lot of reports from people in the bomb shelters and things. That's interesting. And we were going to talk to Yara, who's a Ukrainian national from 90 Day Fiancé, but she was all set up to go.
I think it was too overwhelming.
I think she's afraid of saying something that could hurt somebody at home or something.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, so we'll see. So again, anyone on Clubhouse wants to come up and ask a question, you just raise your hand and I will come to you, but you'll be streamed out on multiple platforms if you do raise your hand.
I mean, I'm really worried about World War. I don't have,
that's what's
I've
always
never
the
wanted
threat
that
when this kind of thing gets going.
And,
as I said, I was watching documentaries on the First World War, and these were all family members. I mean, these royal families were all close relationships, and it all unraveled because of these real politics, so-called. All right, well, listen, I got to wrap things up. I thank Art Aidala for spending a little time with us. As I said, tomorrow we're going to talk COVID. We're going to get deeper into the
one thing about Dr.
vaccines.
Drew is, like, usually in times like this, we aren't experts on politics and war.
No.
That's not our thing.
No.
Like, we're just here to have a chat about it, give our feelings, make people feel better, hopefully.
Well, that's why I'm trying to think of ways to get people to talk about it. That's why I was bringing cast members of 90 Day Fiancé as sort of a hook.
Right.
To
we're
bring
not
people
trying to exploit anybody or make it.
No. Or make things worse. And I don't, I'm upset by what's happening there. I'm mortified. I feel helpless, and there's nothing good about it, period. And I don't feel like I can really do anything about it, but we can certainly talk about it and share our feelings about it, that kind of thing. Again, I'm watching you all on Restream. Thank you, Jeans. Thank you guys that are your mom's house fans. Again, tomorrow we're going to get deep into COVID, and thank you, Caleb, for producing. Thank you, Michelle, for booking this. Susan, thank you for using your reframe and your hydrolite to put you in a position where you can
firing up the reframe,
make it today's show. And we will.
I was overserved.
And we will see everybody tomorrow at 3:00 Pacific. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.